Support for this episode comes from UNCSA's School of Filmmaking. Tell your own story. Master the art of storytelling at the UNCSA School of Filmmaking, ranked the top public film school in the nation by The Hollywood Reporter and ninth best overall. At UNCSA, students learn to craft compelling narratives across genres, styles, and mediums, all while utilizing cutting-edge technologies. Graduates are skilled in every aspect of the cinematic arts and specialize in areas such as cinematography, directing, and screenwriting. From day one, UNCSA supports student projects with financial and technical resources, helping the next generation of filmmakers turn their dreams into reality. The hands-on curriculum is taught by industry professionals with decades of real-world experience. And every day is a networking opportunity with guest artists like Oscar-winning actor Troy Kotsur and Disney screenwriting legend Linda Wolverton. Filmmaking graduates go on to excel in their fields, becoming innovators, leaders, and creative forces in the industry, like Danny McBride and Jeff Nichols, or Emmy award-winning sound designer Will Files. Unleash your creativity. Visit uncsa.edu/filmmaking to start your journey.
I mean, we are artists, but I always feel like weird saying that because, you know, we're like interpretive artists. Mm-hmm. But I do think that like there is an essence of something in me that led me to acting. And I think that highest part of me in that essence is what makes me a better person.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Marianne Rendón is an actor. I sat down with her in her home in Brooklyn to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process when you get a new character? Like, is there a typical road you go down to kind of wrap your arms around this new person that you have to play?
Yes. I am really clued into the rhythm of the writer. I feel like that's how I was trained. That's what I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. I don't always get the luxury of a writer whose rhythm is intentional or thinks about characters having different rhythms. I think that, apropos of what you were saying about wanting directors to study acting. Yeah. I think it's the same with writers, but that's how I feel like I start, because I feel like there's so many clues. That's like the fun part for me. Yeah. In an audition or reading a script for the first time of like, okay, who are they sketching here? Yeah. Like what form am I starting with? And then the muscles or the sinews of the form is like the stuff that I like to bring, which varies on what the project is demanding of me. So I recently was studying the method, but the method is so misunderstood in our, people think that just, like Jared Leto, Joaquin Phoenix, or, Daniel Day-Lewis being in character for 2 months, that's method acting, but it's not. It's actually like a very active, creative experience of asking sensory questions and improvising in that. So that's something that I didn't have. And in a way, I had that in my first year at school, where we had a wonderful teacher, Richard Feldman, who was leading us through method exercises, and we didn't even know it. And a lot of it was just about relaxation. But this is all to say that like the sinews of what I was talking about, or the muscularity behind a character, I guess, is if it's a very emotionally demanding or dark role, I'm drawing on certain experiences from my life. And it doesn't mean like they're traumatic experiences. It could be my childhood bedroom or like my mother's hands and things like that.
Is there some reason why that's first? You know what I mean? Like, is it just because it's important for you and that's why it's first? Or is that like a foundational thing that you lay things on top of?
I think it's just how I always started was, the writer is telling me who I am. I'm not trying to tell the writer who I am.
Right.
And
it's part of finding this person.
Yeah. And it is a collaboration. You have to, the writer at some point has to let go of an idea.
Right.
And hopefully that happens. But I just think that there's already so much there in the script, and that's our job is to sort of fulfill this dream of someone else's.
Yeah. You mentioned school. What school was this?
I went to Juilliard for my master's. I'd gone to Bard College before that, which was amazing because I studied with Joanna Colitis when I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
She co-founded Mabel Minds and ran the public theater for a long time, and just was this huge beacon in American theater in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Yeah.
I can't believe that I got to experience all this incredible experimental theater before I even really read Tennessee Williams. Like I didn't know any of the American classics and a lot of what people were studying in high school even.
Yeah. And what do you think that did in terms of forming you?
Well, yeah, it felt like this sort of reverse engineering in a way because it just gave me taste. I think it just gave me I was just like, and I was always a weirdo. So I just felt really at home in the everything being a little bit darker or a little bit more of a gesture of something rather than like a realistic portrayal of something. I think it like really opened my mind, opened to possibilities of what art is supposed to be. I was directed by Daniel Fish when I was 20. We did a Carol Churchill play that she co-directed with Daniel, and I think I just got to play inside this really edgy world, and I was also dancing a lot, and I was also doing performance art a lot, so everything kind of melded into one thing, which was about performance and not about like I am an actor. And then it wasn't until I was in my last year at Bard where I realized I was sort of being unfortunately like influenced by some people will leave here and have famous parents and they will sign with CAA.
Yeah.
I don't have that. So some of it was ego in that like I want to get an agent. I want to like be in this industry. I want to make my living as an actor. But then when I went to audition and I was meeting these teachers, I was like, oh no, like there's so much more I have to learn about skills and technique and about acting. That was something that I felt that I had instincts for, but I didn't have any. I had a very low self-esteem about it. Weirdly, when I exited that world of Bard, I remember being in my first year at Juilliard, and people were in those sort of method exercises with Richard, and I was like, I'm a musician. I'm not an actor. Everyone feels so free, and I'm tortured. Like do not look at me. I can't relax. I was a mess. So it gave me a lot more belief in myself that like I was doing the right thing and that I could make it my career. And even though I struggled with confidence through a lot of years, I at least believed that like, okay, if anyone's going to do it, I can do it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And to have that kind of evaluation that you needed more work to be done. You weren't getting that from outside forces telling you that. That was a self-evaluation of that. Doesn't that say, that says a lot about you, I think.
Yeah, I think I was always really ambitious.
Yeah.
In the sense that I watched my dad, who's 70, work his ass off and really like struggle to, live paycheck to paycheck in a way. So I looked at that as something to be of value, and that's how you are valued in the world. And at the same time, he's also like, what was so important to him was his relationships, and that was, I think, what his success was. Is that's what inevitably gave him success, is that people wanted to work with him for his working relationships. So I guess I observed that, and I subconsciously or not just knew that if I was going to survive, I couldn't just do the experimental theater that my heart wanted to do. But also from a very young age, I would watch the Oscars and be like, that I want. I saw Penelope Cruz winning her Oscar, and I was like, that I want that. And I was moved by that. Not just for the status, but she is such a beautiful creator. And it's like mythic, that quality of being able to like bring life to people's homes. And I felt so alone in my home, and I felt so at home with the actors that I watched.
Interesting. Yes. And so what did you do then following school to kind of set that into place? Like, was it easy to get representation? Or
I was very lucky in that I got an agent coming out of Juilliard at a very good agency, and I had been auditioning even before I had graduated. So I got Imposters, which was my first sort of big job, as a series regular, like a month out of school. I remember I was working in the office doing temp work, and they called me, and my life was changed.
Yeah, that must have been amazing.
It was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how many seasons did that have?
That was only 2 seasons.
Sometimes it's like, when I hear about like a show going on, like, it's kind of like a careful what you wish for kind of thing.
Totally. I mean, I think like anything, the specialness starts to just dissolve as it goes along, and what the focus and the concentration of this shared goal just starts to more voices come in, and it just becomes this watered down version of the thing. And people only have seasons for that long for money. Like the artists don't want to do it. Right. Because they know things get watered down. And
were you starting to get an idea of how you work and what works best for you?
Yeah. So I think a big reason I booked that job is that Jules, it was back to rhythm. Like Jules, the character that I played, she's so tightly wound, and her rhythm is so fast. And I think strangely, I trained myself. I somehow discovered at Juilliard that like that was a strength of mine, that I could say, I could have a lot of language and spin it in all these really fun ways is very technical. And I think I started to believe that was my only tempo. Like if I do it this fast, I'll get the job or something, which is so weird to think about in hindsight. But I do think that is what they were like, it's her more than any of those other people, is that I could grab all of that language that Adam Brooks and Paul Edelstein wrote and make it like a real person, and be in her anxiety. So that has taken a lot of undoing, like active undoing.
Interesting.
And because it started to even like affect my system.
Interesting.
Weirdly, because it's like that with comedy and things being, really tight, and tempo is everything, and timing. It's also the same rhythm of like auditioning, weirdly, or it can be, or that's what I told myself, and so now it's been years since, but I think it's been like a sloughing of that habit. I loved being on set. Like I felt like I had been training at high altitude, and I was finally able to just be. And I really was interested in all of the crew members. Like I loved how passionate they were and how much of their life this was. Like they didn't have lives outside of it. It was that important to them. I also, my dad is a sound engineer, and I'd walk onto the stage and the smell of those cables was like my dad. Huh. So
Interesting.
I was like, I just loved all those crew guys. Like they reminded, even though they were Canadian, they reminded me of the guys I grew up with and women. Yeah, I think I slowly realized on that job that it was very important to me to be on a set where the crew feels respected and that you have a relationship with them. That always made me feel like I could do my best work. Mm-hmm. I've been on other sets where it didn't feel that way, and I noticed I don't know how it affected my performance, but it definitely made me hate going to work. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that had to do with Adam Brooks and Paul's leadership, and that like I learned that I was very spoiled for that to be my first job, to see how welcome every department head felt in the decision making, and it's such a small thing, and people don't realize the power that they have. Yeah, and all of us. I don't, Yeah. And it's electricity. It affects the entire space.
Yeah. And what about working with a director? What works best for you?
It depends, because I've worked with directors. I just have to trust them. Yeah. I think it's really important in the theater for your director to have a huge point of view. They don't necessarily have to walk you through building the character with you, but I have found, I think I find that I'm freer with a director who has a stronger hand on everything. But then at the same time, like I love being left alone, and if they feel like they trust me, I think there's parts in me that can unravel that I don't always show everyone. So I'm not sure. I think it's both. It really depends on the project.
With Charlie Says, when you're playing somebody that was a real person and it's wrapped in like serious darkness, was there an apprehension about diving into something that kind of dark?
I was really young, and I think about it a lot now. If I had done it now, I would have felt differently. I think then I just felt like I felt weirdly abstract about it. I was so lucky to have, she wrote this wild autobiography called Child of Satan, Child of God, because she had become a born-again Christian in prison. And it was great for me because it really helped me to understand how difficult and traumatic her childhood was, and that I could just build off of that, of like what her needs were and what her, where her holes were that she was looking to fill. And that's why it justified everything about being in a family.
So if things make sense in that way, then it's not scary, I guess, right? Because there's answers.
Yeah, and then I mean, they don't even understand why that happened. So, my teacher, wonderful teacher, Tony Greco, that I've studied with, said, every character does what they do always for a positive reason. Right. So her drive was really just about belonging through all of it. And, numbing, I mean, that's what all the drugs were. Yeah. And it's painful and weird and hard being an actor in my own personal relationships, because I'm always justifying people's behavior. Yeah. People hurt me, and I'm still like, oh, well, they're coming from this place. So
I never thought about that. Actors have to not judge their characters, and then if that seeps over into their real life, then they're being more empathetic with people in their real life.
I mean, that's not always a bad thing.
That's not a bad thing, but sometimes I guess it could be
a self-destructive thing, because then you're not actually like being empathetic with yourself.
Right.
And that is
You're letting
the lifelong journey.
Yeah, you're letting people off the hook, I guess.
Yeah.
Like you would let your character off the hook, because you have to.
Yeah.
Because you have to figure out how to get that positive motivation for everything.
Yeah.
I never thought of it like that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that it's making you a better person though, being an actor?
Oh, I don't know. There's being an actor as like it's a part of my fabric of my being, and then there's like being an actor, which is like a business person.
Yeah.
And I think I grapple with that, because being the actor as a business person makes me miserable. Mm-hmm. And with all the comparison making, all the paranoia, all the like just waiting, and then the fabric of me, it's like acting, like I was saying, it bleeds into my relationships. It bleeds into like me wanting to write something. My writing something wants to bleed into the acting. And so I guess it's, I mean, we are artists, but I always feel like weird saying that, because, we're like interpretive artists. Mm-hmm. But I do think that like there is an essence of something in me that led me to acting. And I think that highest part of me in that essence is what makes me a better person.
Yeah, that's very well said.
But that self gets clouded by a lot of the business actor part of me, or the ambitious part of me, or the ego actor of me. And it's this thing you straddle of, you have to have ego to like stand in the responsibility of it, and also to be like seen, to demand that people look at you, to hire you.
Right.
But then you also have to be, it's not about you. It's really not.
Yeah. Isn't that a weird paradox?
Yeah.
I am sad that people will not come to summer solstice the way I did.
Oh.
Because knowing absolutely nothing about it at all, pressing play, unfortunately, that's the only bad part of this story. It's in my home, right? I have a pretty good screen though. Okay, but it would be nice if this was at a screening, right? And letting this thing just play out. That experience of it. And then I mean, your performance, I don't even want to utter the words that this is a fantastic performance, because if anybody goes in there thinking that this is a great performance, it's cutting off your experience of it. I can't describe this. I never
read about films before I see them. Like, I don't read any reviews. I don't read anything, because I love to just be surprised. Yeah.
Yeah. And then just the nature of this story and the way it's told in this way that I just want things to be done now that could be done now, which is like bring the stakes down to a human level and make it about a relatable thing, just about two people. Like, why aren't independent filmmakers doing this? What are we doing? Just tell a story about two people, about a weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
And just make it why is this not happening more? Anyway, before I go on and on, tell me how this came to you.
Yeah, well, I think Noah Schamus would be really delighted to hear you say that about the stakes, because Eric Romer was such a huge influence for them. And Noah wrote me this beautiful letter. And I read it and I loved it, and I was scared of her. I was scared of Eleanor, because she's just so cringy. She's so unlikable. And I hadn't ever played anything like her before. And it was just a beautiful film. So there's no way I was going to say no.
Yeah. Did they write it for you?
I think so. I mean, Noah said that they had me in mind, so I don't know. Noah actually had worked on a student film as an AD of a student film at Columbia that I had done when I was like in my first or second year of Juilliard.
This is the reason why
Yeah.
people should do student films.
Yeah, student films.
You have a great
amazing.
filmmaker watching you in the crew.
Yeah. I'm friends with Margot Martindale.
Okay.
That was one of her best pieces of advice was
Yes.
do everything. Do every student film.
Yes.
You're gonna meet incredible people.
Yeah.
And I have. So Noah was there. Sorry, so I was in my last year at Juilliard because Noah was there when I booked Imposters. And I was telling someone about the show being about con artists. And they were like, oh, I know Adam, the creator, because their dad knew Adam. And, they were telling me that Adam is so sweet. And it was just so strange that like my career was starting and Noah was witnessing that.
Interesting.
And then of course, Noah was like, yeah, we've gone out to Bobby, and I loved Bobby's work. So I was really excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how was this magic created? Because it feels like there's a lot of life that's lived before these two characters are seen on the screen. Okay, it is about their past. Did you dive into that together with Bobby and Noah about what exactly their situations were before Fade In?
We didn't. I think we talked about how close they were, and a bit about the college experience, and a bit about where things got a little weird with maybe like we hooked up one time in a drunken way, and then that's alluded to in the film. But no, we didn't talk about it. I thought a lot about myself in college, and specifically my relationship with alcohol. So, but it was all there. And
was it all on the
dialogue.
page? It was all on the page?
I think so, yeah. And Bobby and I drawing on our own thing, and so much of it was just like being with Bobby and feeling the molecules between us. And
yeah. Was there any improv?
oh yeah, there was a lot of improv. Yeah. I mean, usually towards ends of takes, it wasn't like whole scenes were improvised, but I think specifically around some of the more drunken stuff.
Yeah.
Or some kind of like physical thing would be there. There'd be something in the space that would just start happening. But yeah, it was a really strong script.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You're so much this person, and it's so simple life happening where it gets over, and you don't even evaluate it as a performance. I'm saying this is a huge compliment.
Thank you.
It doesn't
really,
sound
really
like
lovely
it.
of you to say.
It doesn't sound like this is. But that's, to me, the height of acting is for something to get over, and you can't even evaluate it. Because it's you feel like you just were with two people.
Yeah.
And that's what I want.
Yeah.
And I had to watch it again to even notice points of storytelling that I received the first time, but they weren't hammered to me like movies tend to do. It's primarily because you and Bobby were handling it in such an organic way, and we were feeling the points instead of labeling them as that and moving on. Was this calculated? Was this directorial? Was this in the script? Or was this just the way you guys were approaching this?
Well, first of all, thank you, Peter. That's really kind of you to say. I love that you say the word organic, because I think that's just what it was, is that Noah had great instincts and taste, and we were shooting in the most beautiful place in the most beautiful time of year. And that place up there is like, that was my utopia with Barge. So, and I hadn't spent time up there since I graduated, which was, maybe 10 years. And so I have a very, very romantic relationship with that landscape and that time of year as well. Like there's nothing more beautiful than the Hudson Valley in the summer. If I am dying somewhere, I'm going to die there because it's just the produce, the sky, the light, the air. There's just, and Noah wrote that, Noah knew what that was and really knew how to capture it. And I think that pace of the nature, and then really Bobby's pace was just much more, there was so much more space that they gave themselves that it was contagious. Like, and as I was talking about earlier of like the habit I was slowly breaking with every project of like, oh, I don't have to be fast to be good. There's so much experience. And what I've been working on with like certain, method stuff of like the texture of living, and having life and living on camera. And I'm still working on that, of course. But I think it just happened really organically. And it's amazing how much a space informs everything.
Yeah.
Like, when you shoot, you've probably experienced this, like, but everyone shoots in like a small apartment or like a building, and everyone is pissed. Yeah. And it's just like, there's just this tension. Yeah. And so there was none of that. We had so much space.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, I guess that changes everything when it's free like that.
Yeah.
A moment that keeps coming back to me is the way you, as this character, handle the situation where you don't know why Leo is not coming into the pool, and then it's revealed to you that it's because they're binding, and the way you say something back, like, why didn't you just tell me? And then you go under the water. But I don't know why I keep thinking of that.
So that is the moment that made me absolutely certain that I wanted to do the film, because Noah wrote that.
It's written in like that.
Written. And I was like, you Noah, understand behavior. And you understand, and what was so moving to me about Eleanor is that, like, especially a trans or non-binary person could write a cis character with a one-dimensionality, and Noah never did that. Noah was always taking care of Eleanor. Yeah. About back to this thing of like, where are they? What are they coming from? Yeah. And so there's so many examples of that in Eleanor's behavior, especially towards the end. But that pool moment, I was like, that is brilliant screenwriting.
But then you had to do that. Like, this is a beautiful combination of writing and performance.
Yeah.
Because I would have never thought that was written.
That's so great. I love that. That's like music to my ears.
I'm so glad I told you that, because I was like, I didn't even have a real thing to ask or say with that. But it was important to me. Isn't that funny?
That's so funny. And that I think that answers that first question of yours again, of like, that's what lights me up the most is this like dance with the writer and the marriage of that. And so if it's the seamless thing, that's my dream.
But a lesser actor would have taken that, realized the quote importance of it, done it in a way where it wouldn't have impacted me the same. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know if it's a lesser actor. I think it is just a skill. Like, it is a skill to learn, and anyone can learn a skill of dissecting a script. Yeah, yeah. And understanding how to find what the writer's telling you and giving you already, so that it's like, actually, like, sometimes I'm quite lazy. Like, I'm just like, I mean, that is work, but I'm like, I'm not being incredibly inventive because I'm. Right. And for some reason, that finding those things frees me. It makes me feel less anxious. I feel like I'm not staring at a blank page or a blank canvas.
Right. It's also edited very well. I mean, you know what I mean? It's and I'm noticing that more and more.
Yeah.
It's not drawing attention to itself at all. In fact, so much of this film is not drawing attention to itself. And that's
really
what, you know,
beautifully edited.
that's what I want. I want right now. I think the punk rock thing to do right now is to do a film like this. That is not drawing attention to itself.
Really
it's not something crazy going on in it.
Yeah.
And that's insane right now.
Yeah, I mean the culture, or I don't even know if we have a culture, but there is a culture of like, look at me all the time, and I don't feel like I ever do well in that. Yeah, the editing. It's funny how like you mean it is like music. Like you really have to understand music.
Yeah.
You have to understand comedy. I've done plenty of mostly TV. Some TV where, you know, I felt like there's such great jokes on the page and then the editor kills it. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, I'm sure. And is all of this approach, like rhythmic approach? I mean, your music is a big part of your life, right?
Yes, I started I wanted to be a concert pianist. I started at 4, and I had an amazing teacher. And I don't know what happened to her. She sort of disappeared. I remember I visited her when I was 18, coming back from Bard, and she said, you know, Marianne, there's something wrong with they say there's something wrong with my brain. She was from Uruguay. And I came back the next college break, and she had moved back to Uruguay and didn't have a phone or a computer because she believed that like that was radiation, like that will. And so I don't know how she died, or I assume she died. But maybe she's out there.
Right.
But
just off the grid.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
She was amazing. Her name was Marvi. And she was just, I mean, talk about punk rock. She like broke so many weird, you couldn't put her in a box at all. Like she was a lawyer and a single mother and taught piano out of her apartment. You know, she had gone to Juilliard. And she would teach us, she was really into Isadora Duncan. So, and Eurythmics. So she would, before we started a piece, she would play the piece and we were supposed to dance to it.
Wow.
And this was in like, you know, New Rochelle, like where I grew up, and it's like it's not woo-woo at all.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just, and then when I'd have a really frustrating time, and I was, you know, and I was a kid, and kids are having like tantrums while trying to have a piano lesson, like the focus was, and she was like, lie down on the floor, and I'd lie down, and she'd like basically do Reiki on me. Wow. Like she'd hold my head. Wow. And it was Reiki. I mean, she like taught me about chakras when I was, you know. So yeah, I learned very quickly that I did not like the classical music world. I felt like I was really bad at memorizing. I didn't like the competitive part of performing. And I was too social, I think, to go into that life.
But then you went into other music, right?
Yeah. I taught myself some guitar and played along and realized I love to sing. And my mother's a singer, so I feel like I always sort of backed off of that idea. But our voices are so different that I slowly found my voice and fell in love with, you know, old country music and Americana and 70s rock, and it kept me alive. Like, you know, having the internet really kept me alive in high school, of like finding my people in this very, very, very small world where it was really important to conform. And there were like tons of freaks in Westchester, and we all found each other and like went to hard rock, you know, I mean. That's
a good thing of the internet, right? Where people can find each other.
That's the good part of it, is that like you really can find community. But then we eventually met up. And got drunk and danced. That's great. You know. So yeah.
So when you have an experience like this with this movie, and this, you know, in this landscape of the marvelization of the film world, it requires like all the efforts from everyone to lift up a film like this so it gets attention and gets seen, you know what I mean? But forget about what happens. You've done your part. It's there forever, and it's time to move on to the next thing for you as an artist. What's your long-term, I hate every word that's coming to me. What does your heart want?
Oh, that like really touched me. I'm really greedy, I think, in that I want everything. Like I want financial stability to be able to do student films. Yeah. But then I also want to work with auteurs. I want to work with Terrence Malick and PTA, and you know, I want to learn from the best. I want to work with actors that I'm so humbled by. I want to just keep learning. And then I want to work with new people and people that are within my community that are brilliant. Like I think that's something that I really missed as I was so short-sighted coming out of school. I had my eye on the prize of like this pretend ideal of what success meant. And I really missed out on like what my peers were doing and how they were better than anyone else making millions. And I've been coming back to that. Like I've been, you know, I'm so humbled that my peers want to work with me and that they have such good ideas. And, you know, so I'm right after the wedding, we're doing a short film of our friend Babe Howard's, who's 24, and his script is so good. Like it's so good than like half the things I'm auditioning for. And it surprised me. I couldn't believe what happens in a short. And like, that's always what never happened. It's like nothing ever happens in a short. We talk about things that never happened, but, and, I want to make something. Like I want to try that. And I want to, you know, Bruce and I are also weirdly, we're working together a lot, which is awesome to work with your partner. But, we've been working we've been workshopping a play that is one of my favorite playwrights. I can't say it because if I don't get it, then I feel like an idiot. But like, we've been workshopping this play, and this playwright was, one of the most important writers in my whole life when I was 18. And the fact that it was like in her living room and like we're working on it, and she's a longtime collaborator of Bruce's. I would love to do a play. I haven't done a play since 2018. So that's a long time. I want to do it all, Peter.
Yeah.
I want to do it all.
I want you to, selfishly, as an audience member, so I could see it.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess that's something too, is like, I have made these like wonderful, really, really small films. I'm so glad this is getting a theatrical run. Like, I'm so happy for Noah and us. But like, I really just want my work to get seen. Like, it's so sad when you like, for everyone, when you like, you really invest in these projects and then no one gets to see them. Yeah. They go through like applying to the festival circuit and they're so good. And but that's why I'm excited by like how the culture of theater is changing. And I feel like this is going to start to happen more and more with indie filmmaking, where it becomes more of a collective and like you're not using these institutions for people to be able to see them. Like people are self-producing and they get the income directly. All the artists do. And so I'm excited by that. And if that's how it keeps going, then I'm down.
Yes. Marianne Rendón, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.